So Caitlin Johnstone basically is coming up with a thesis that China is not I don't want to put words in her mouth, but my impression is China is not an imperialist nation, basically. But I tweeted this. It said China's secretly building a PLA naval facility in Cambodia. That's the People's Liberation Army. That's China's army in Cambodia. And then what she got me on is Western officials say. So this is where she triggered me. She was like, you're literally doing the exact thing I just said, word for word. Please tell me you at least blushed a bit while doing this. Okay, Kaylee. Okay. Okay. She's trying to come at me a little bit like, okay, you dumb bitch. You retweeted CIA propaganda. Okay, you got me. I was going to let it go. But then you're like, okay. She was like, check yourself. But here's the thing, Caitlin, you're not giving me any evidence. So yes, I cannot independently confirm that. Like, who's gonna break that news? Caitlin, China? Like, who else is, like, a country in the East that subscribes to Eastern philosophy? Are they gonna break that news? For some reason, you think China is so loving and they aren't really aggressive. What about Xi Jinping? Is this savage enough for you?
中国人民
At the same time, the Chinese people will never allow any foreign forces to bully, oppress, or enslave us. Anyone who dares try to do that will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel, forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people.
China could not get troops in our country to forcibly take down a statue of Thomas Jefferson from New York City Hall. They couldn't do it if they wanted to with force of military weapons and guns. They use philosophy. This Maoism that we are falling victim to, this neo-Marxism, it's originated from China. They fund our institutions, whether it's the universities that teach the teachers and set all the platforms for the country and was where all the people you would pick to run for politicians, they get taught in this ideology. Entertainment, we just talked about Star Wars. We can't even enjoy a damn Star Wars TV series without critical theory. It's not even Star Wars anymore. It's just like a creative way for Ibram X. Kendi to get his thoughts out there. That's China destroying us. You can't, they're so good at it, they got Caitlin Johnstone supporting it, saying that they're benevolent leaders.
Will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel.
Are you blushing now? That's your take? Yeah, the populist right understands that. It's okay to agree with them. It's made in China, comes over in various ways. We leave our borders open. They don't leave their borders open. They buy farmland here. We can't buy farmland there. They sleep with sitting members of Congress who want to get their bang on, and they are still on the Intelligence Committee in the House. We can't do that there. That's warfare.
Will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel.
You're out of school on this topic. Drop it. Be humble and learn. That's all I need from you. I don't know how this happened, because I like Caitlin Johnstone. Please don't get me wrong in this back and forth. This is our second back and forth recently. What triggers me, though, is people who are fake and won't acknowledge when the populist right is right. I will acknowledge when the establishment is right. I'm just more about what's right and what's not. So Caitlin Johnstone basically is coming up with a thesis that China is not I don't want to put words in her mouth, but my impression is China is not an imperialist nation, basically. She triggered me. I'll get to how she triggered me in a little bit. I don't really get triggered too often, but she did. She got a little zinger in on me. I was like, okay, Caitlin, you got me a little bit. I think you're out of school on this one, but let's see. Maybe I'm the one that's off. She says Europeans set sail to conquer and colonize populations around the world. China built a wall. These are two very different cultures and value systems. The Western assumption that China wants to take over the world and give us all social credit scores is based on pure projection. So she said a lot in the tweet there. So she's saying, she ended the tweet with saying the social credit score system is projection from the West. For it to be projection from the West, she somehow thinks Western culture would agree with utilitarianism or collectivism. I'm like, okay. Then she kept going. This assumption is also premised on the absurd belief that Beijing has been watching the U.S. empire rapidly burn itself out with its role as unipolar hegemon and thinking, hey, that looks awesome. Let's definitely do that. This tweet was regrettable. That doesn't make any sense. China doesn't look at us and nobody's making that case. China looks at us and they look down at us. I'm talking about the government here. They're like, the way that America does it isn't good enough. We can do it better. The belief that China wants to conquer and colonize a bunch of white people is about as well founded as the old belief that black people were trying to move into white neighborhoods to have sex with white men's wives. Not everyone wants what you have, dudes. You're not that cool. Caitlyn is better than this. I mean, Caitlyn Johnstone has done, I would say probably 90% of the stuff, I don't know, 90, but a lot of the stuff I see from Caitlyn Johnstone, I agree with. And then lately it's been like, whoa, you're a little off here. The belief that China wants to conquer and colonize a bunch of white people. Number one, I don't think China, they don't give a damn if you're white, Russian, European, black, whatever. They feel like they have a better way than you. So I don't even know how why is even race coming up in this? And then you went to the black people movie. That was odd. That was weird. And then somebody replied and said, is the fact that we are seeing Chinese-style social credit initiatives cropping up in the West an indication that you are wrong? So somebody who probably likes her as well is like, are you off on this one? What is a V passport good for? That's what China wants. Globalization. China's basically controlling this globalization movement because they won't have it control them. That's for damn sure. Caitlyn says, only in the most propaganda-addled echo chambers does the idea of Western power structures using Western means to oppress Westerners look Chinese. She doesn't even know what Western, Western power structures are or Western values are. Somebody said, I normally like what you tweet, but I don't agree, but clearly you have no idea about China's Belt and Road Plan. That's probably the first thing. I know there's three-cornered wheel. She's not even qualified to have this discussion. I agree completely. And I'm like, I don't think she's read on this. I mean, and it's her and her husband, and I have no beef with them. I have absolutely no beef with them. But she doesn't know anything about the Chinese culture. She doesn't know anything about the Chinese history. I mean, you talk about their history of expansionism and demand. I mean, you're talking about the Mongol dynasty. That's like one of the biggest ever. They're so sophisticated. Thank you in the chat. Bishop says at Davos, they literally stated they want a social credit system based on an app on your phone using a QR code. They will track all your purchases and travel to track your carbon footprint. I saw that. I saw the clip too. That is literally what they did. That Eastern philosophy that's coming straight out of China. And yes, people in the West want it because they're like, that's a great way to control people. So they want to erode, because Western values don't go that way. So yes, there are people in the West, in our country, who want to erode Western values so they can sneak stuff like this in. So Kathy Hochul can say hate speech is not allowed in our country and nobody says anything because they don't even know what their values are anymore. But of course, the first thing everybody's thinking about is the One Belt Road or whatever it's called, the Silk Road Initiative, where they just run around, lend people money and wait until they can't afford it anymore and then they take over kind of type of stuff. So they call it the Silk Road Initiative. But it's really like, I think if we put you in debt, we can control
This episode of China Uncensored. It's a trap! Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. If you've noticed that China seems to be coming up a lot more often in the news lately, well, you would be right. Chinese officials are eager to make China a superpower, and they're doing it with the help of an ancient Chinese Communist Party secret. Lots and lots of money. Yes, money. The key to a successful communist regime. The party has, over the past few years, lent huge sums of money to cash-strapped countries and then leveraged that debt to get what it wants.
Caitlyn, they're not doing this out the kindness of their heart. They're not doing this because they love people. There's a strategy here.
A lot of this is tied to a $1 trillion plan to build infrastructure around the world and then use it to create wealth, mostly for Chinese companies, move goods, mostly from China, and gain influence, mostly for the Chinese Communist Party. This project is called the Belt and Road Initiative, also known as One Belt, One Road. Let's get together and feel all right. Now, it's nothing new for countries with money to spare to help out needy neighbors by offering them a loan. Plenty of countries do it, including the US. But the Chinese Communist Party does it, as they like to put it, with Chinese characteristics.
This stands in stark contrast to China's approach, which encourages dependency, using opaque contracts, predatory loan practices, and corrupt deals that mire nations in debt and undercut their sovereignty, denying them their long-term self-sustaining growth.
As you might guess, some of the countries who have made these deals with China aren't feeling so all right anymore. The first port of call is Sri Lanka. In 2010, Sri Lanka got a 1.5.
So this is what they do. Instead of sending the military out there with guns and overpowering and say we need to overthrow people or do whatever, they do it this way.
$500 million Chinese loan to build a giant port in the town of Hambantota, which would be great, except it has barely any shipping traffic. Without traffic through the port, Sri Lanka realized it couldn't pay back its debt to China. So instead, it signed away the entire...
You know who knew that they wouldn't be able to pay their debt back to China? China knew.
Bantota, which would be great, except it has barely any shipping traffic. Without traffic through the port, Sri Lanka realized it couldn't pay back its debt to China. So instead, it signed away the entire port with a 99-year lease. The China Merchants Port Holding got a 70% controlling stake in the Hambantota port. With this agreement, we have started to pay back the loans, the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka told Parliament, and talked about there being more money for economic development. But critics say the cure might be worse than the disease. Some see the deal as a precedent for countries that owe money to China to accept deals that involve signing over territory. Territory that the Chinese regime might want to eventually use for military purposes.
Oh, so it wasn't out the kindness of their heart then. Is that what you're saying? Thank you. China Uncensored is a great channel. So here's how Caitlin kind of triggered me, and she had a point here. So I will say that. I don't think it makes her point, even though she had a point. I tweeted this because I'm just going to use that thread now for any type of Chinese imperialism. It's going to go under her thread. And I appreciate her. She hasn't blocked me. I don't really get into name calling or contentious with you. And I like her. So, but I like Anomaly and I'm blocked there too. So I like Hotep Jesus and I'm blocked there. So at least she didn't block me. I will give her and her husband, whoever's running it, credit. But I tweeted this. It said China's secretly building a PLA naval facility in Cambodia. That's the People's Liberation Army. That's China's army in Cambodia. And then what she got me on is Western officials say. I'm like, okay, I know. I can't independently confirm this. So this is where she triggered me. She was like, you're literally doing the exact thing I just said, word for word. Please tell me you at least blushed a bit while doing this. Okay, Kaylee. Okay. Okay. She's trying to come at me a little bit like, okay, you dumb bitch. You retweeted CIA propaganda. Okay. You got me. I was going to let it go. But then you're like, okay. She was like, check yourself. But here's the thing, Caitlin. You're not giving me any evidence. So yes, I cannot independently confirm that. Like, who's gonna break that news? Caitlin, China? Like, who else? Like, a country in the East that subscribes to Eastern philosophy? Are they going to break that news? I guess maybe India would. Maybe. I don't see them breaking news like that a lot. So, yeah, I have no way to confirm it. I have absolutely, not even a little bit. I have no way. But you know who else has no way to confirm it? Yes, that's you, Caitlin. You don't have a way to confirm or deny that being true either. And with what I know about the area, it's possible. But since you think I don't know, for some reason you think China's so loving and they aren't really aggressive. Well, what about Xi Jinping? Is this savage enough for you?
中国人民
At the same time, the Chinese people will never allow any foreign forces to bully, oppress, or enslave us. Anyone who dares try to do that will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel, forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people.
What did you say, nigga?
Come again, my nickel?
Us. Anyone who dares try to do that will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel, forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people.
This is the group that Caitlin, that's what you're condoning, or not condoning, but that's what you're saying is non-imperialist? This dude sounded like he came straight out of like a Marvel villain movie. They probably don't even put that in the movies. That's savage.
Anyone who dares try to do that will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel, forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people.
Guess what, Caitlin? That's a threat. Who do you think he's talking to? There's no other country in the world that he would even be talking to like that, because he wouldn't even respect them enough. He's talking about the U.S. Now, I know Caitlin's Australian or whatever, but she gets into U.S. politics. What does Xi Jinping think about the U.S.?
Anyone who dares try to do that will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel, forged by over 1.4 billion Chinese people.
Is that what non-imperialism sounds like to you, Caitlin? Our politicians have opened the borders to illegal immigration, or people just saying, I'm here for asylum. You say it, okay, check, yep, okay. And drug trafficking. Who is taking advantage of this more than any other country in the world? China. They make money off of the drugs. They don't have to spend money to send troops over here and risk lives. And then they can destroy the U.S. from within.
Will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel.
That's imperialism. That's warfare, Caitlin. Did you not understand that? I know it's better. It's more sophisticated than what we do, building bases all over the place and burning money in Afghanistan and Russia, Ukraine, and all that, while you look bad on the world stage. I know what we do is stupid. What they do is sophisticated, but the objective is the same. Just because they're better at it doesn't mean they don't do it. That's expansionism. That's imperialism. This drug flows through Mexico. You can literally track the path. This has been done on mainstream outlets, so don't just believe me. 60 Minutes did a piece on this. So the ports handle large volumes of this merchandise, and then it comes up through South Mexico. Then the precursors are converted into the drug, pure drug here, what you see people walking around like zombies in San Francisco like. That's China that's bringing that in. You know, when we look at what's causing more deaths than the pandemic, like overdoses and stuff like that, a lot of that's coming in through China. So they're able to get their goal accomplished without using any weapons. You should be talking about that, Caitlin. We took down a statue of our third president, founding father, out of the economic capital of our country. You couldn't do that with troops in China right now.
To be a person of color means to live a parallel existence with white New Yorkers.
The new panel will also consider the demand from some council members to remove the City Hall statue of Thomas Jefferson because he owned slaves.
For the first time in nearly 2 centuries, a statue of Thomas Jefferson is no longer standing inside New York City Hall.
China could not get troops in our country to forcibly take down a statue of Thomas Jefferson from New York City Hall. They couldn't do it if they wanted to with force of military weapons and guns. They use philosophy. This Maoism that we are falling victim to, this neo-Marxism, it's originated from China. They fund our institutions, whether it's the universities that teach the teachers and set all the platforms for the country, and was where all the people you would pick to run for politicians, they get taught in this ideology. Entertainment, we just talked about Star Wars. We can't even enjoy a damn Star Wars TV series without critical theory. It's not even Star Wars anymore. It's just like a creative way for Ibram X. Kendi to get his thoughts out there. That's China destroying us. You can't, they're so good at it. They got Caitlin Johnstone supporting it, saying that they're benevolent leaders.
Will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel.
Are you blushing now? That's your take? Yeah, the populist right understands that. It's okay to agree with them. It's made in China, comes over in various ways. We leave our borders open. They don't leave their borders open. They buy farmland here. We can't buy farmland there. They sleep with sitting members of Congress who want to get their bang bang on, and they are still on the Intelligence Committee in the House. We can't do that there. That's warfare.
Will have their heads bashed bloodied against the Great Wall of Steel.
You're out of school on this topic. Drop it. Be humble and learn. That's all I need from you at this point. Caitlin talked about how China built a wall. And I just played a clip with Comic Dave Smith quoting Ron Paul. Ron Paul said, well, I'm not too big on a wall because a wall can serve multiple purposes. See, China is a nationalist state. They embrace nationalism. They teach nationalism in their schools. I'm not saying we necessarily need to do that, but that is the mentality. And a wall can be built not just to keep people out, but to keep people in. And doesn't mean that just because they have a wall that they aren't trying to dominate the world. You can't see that? I asked Caitlin multiple times, and I don't usually... I don't like this gotcha stuff. Like, do you know this? Do you know that? There's a lot. I don't know. I'm not an expert in everything. I'm not even well read. I've read some things. I'm like a jack of all trades. I've read a little bit of a lot of things. But I asked Caitlin, if you're going to talk about the mentality of China and how they take it to warfare, have you read The Art of War? No response yet. Like, if somebody asked me if I read The Art of War, I'd be like, yeah, I read it multiple times. What do you want to talk about? And even if you haven't read it, you can maybe understand the concepts, because the concepts are all out there. It's very easy to find the book. It's free everywhere, and people talk about it on YouTube channels. Even if you don't read the book, you can understand the concepts in it. If you don't understand the concepts in The Art of War, Caitlin, how are you going to talk about China culture of warfare? You have no idea what they try to do. They're smart. So Caitlin's doing the same thing she condemns people to do of Russia. When I posted that tweet, and I think she did have a point, Western sources say whatever, same kind of BS. Hunter's laptop comes out and they're like, these CIA sources say, yeah, I got you. But this still does line up with everything that I see. So I don't know if it's true or not. But what she's doing is choosing what to believe based solely on the source. And then she provides no substance. She had the wall was the biggest substance that she provided to make her case that China's not as imperialist of a nation as America. That's the only thing? And then I debunked that. You have no substance, and then you take it to so she has no substance in it at all. But see, what Caitlin's about is trying to say, hey, you're being lied to. And that's all she knows and all she's focused on is, okay, the CIA said this, you're being lied to. This is propaganda, you're being lied to, which is value, which is great. But that's not going to help you through this topic. Or really any topic. You've got to know more than that, other than accusing people of lying to you. So you can't. So I'm trying to. I think this is good. I think this would be what I'm trying to do is help her get depth, because right now she's stuck on, well, the CIA lied about this. You know what I mean? Like, or oh, this is the propaganda here. But that's the same thing they do about Russia. Things are more. It's more than just dodging propaganda. So Sun Tzu, if you don't know, if you haven't read the book, it is a must. It describes politics, war, anything. It is a must read. I think it's when my sons get a little bit older, and he doesn't have to get that much older. I'll read it to him. he will read this book. We will study this book. He was a legendary Chinese military strategist. And I would break it down to his major focus was how to win a battle or war, politically, kinetically, whatever, without direct conflict, without putting your life on the line, without having to kill somebody.
If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Sun Tzu. War is part of life. It's in the nature of most living organisms to engage in battle, defeat opponents, and to dominate. Aside from specific tips on combat, the art of war has a profound philosophical side to it. Sun Tzu argues that war shouldn't be taken lightly, that the highest form of warfare is defeating the enemy without fighting, and that being still and inscrutable is the business of a general. He emphasizes the use of intelligence over brute force and teaches us how to win battles the smart way.
So China's view of dominating the world isn't going to be dropping nukes everywhere and the world's all destructed and destroyed and they're the ones left standing. No, their view of dominating the world is to bring Chinese philosophy, Eastern culture philosophy to the rest of the world, and we won't need to dominate you. You already believe what we believe, and we got the money, we got the power. That's how they would dominate, without firing a bullet. So I asked her if she read it. No answer to this point. Caitlin, you're great overall. Have you or your husband on the show anytime. I'd be happy to have an exchange of ideas respectfully. But you're not qualified to have this discussion. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I am saying I'm more qualified than you. I will say that for sure. But my thesis is, that's why it fits with the theme of the live, my thesis is that Caitlin does mental gymnastics to avoid having to align herself with the American populist right, also known as MAGA. Caitlin, you and your husband, come on the show. I am not lying. I will make each one of you I'll make a Caitlin Johnson MAGA shirt. Caitlin Johnstone Ultra MAGA. I think it would be dope.